So there has never been an explanation for why this takes place until now. So imagine it's like 11 p.m. and you have decided that in the morning you are starting a gym routine. You're going to the gym in the morning at, let's say, 5 a.m. You're going to wake up in 6 hours and go to the gym. So in that moment at 11 p.m., as you're getting into bed, it feels totally decided, like you are going to the gym. This is going to happen. But then in the morning, inevitably, the alarm goes off. You turn it off, and then immediately there's a voice in your head saying, just wait till tomorrow. Like, what's one day gonna hurt? Why is anything gonna change if you just wait till tomorrow? You're tired today. There's plenty of reasons not to go. You know, the bed is comfy. You need to do a lot of work today. The extra hour of sleep is gonna change things for you. It'll be so much easier if you just go to the gym tomorrow. So think about what happened there, though. At night, the voice in your head was arguing, you're going to the gym. It's happening tomorrow. Then you wake up in bed, and then 6 hours later, the same voice is arguing, do not go to the gym. So which voice is you? Is the voice saying go to the gym you, or is the voice saying not go to the gym you? Or if both voices are you, then why are you incoherent? Why are you arguing against yourself? But this is a known phenomena across the world. I mean, even in like mythology, for example, or in stories, there's angels and devils on your shoulder, like in cartoons even, that are arguing both sides of the argument. And so people know that there is some sort of thought pattern or voice in your head that exists that argues the pros and cons, that argues for one thing at one point and then another thing at another point. And this happens in weight loss or in learning or in studying or working or training or whatever it is. This happens all the time. Why doesn't the decision from 11 p.m. translate to waking up in the morning? Is that actually you? And if it's not, then who or what is making your decisions? This is the question that has not been solved in neuroscience or in psychology or in biology at large across the board. So if this is a universal human pattern, then there has to be some sort of physical underlying mechanism that's happening inside of our brains. So what is it? Well, it's possible that just recently there's new ideas that have emerged that might point to what's going on here. And what we already know for sure is where part of this process takes place, what this voice is. And neuroscience and psychology tells us this is the ego, and the ego operates in neuroscience in the default mode network. This is the sense of self, the sense of a coherent person through time who has memories, who has a story, who can explain who they are. When you ask someone, who are you? They give you an answer, and that answer is operating through the default mode network, and the ego is providing that answer. So there is this mechanism of who we are and this voice that does argue who you are, defends you in some senses, and argues for and against actions, beliefs, thoughts, and all of the above. So there is something about us that operates in the world and differentiates me from you and here from there and hot from cold. And this is the differentiation engine that is us. And the ego is doing all of this through the default mode network. So there's already a lot of really good research on this front, so I highly recommend you checking it out. Like Menon 2023, Carhart Harris, and a lot of his work. Right now, the default mode network consumes 40% of the brain's energy above baseline. So right now, the brain uses 20% of the body's entire energy budget, even though the brain is only 2 to 3% of the body's mass. And the default mode network uses 40% above that baseline for the brain. So the default mode network is consuming tons of energy relative to the rest of the brain, and especially the body. And what we know from, for example, flow states, and flow states are those moments when action just flows effortlessly when you're playing sports or video games or music or writing or whatever it is, you get locked into the zone. We know that flow requires the suppression of the default mode network. This is well researched in neuroscience and in cognitive science. And interestingly enough, Carhart Harris found that alpha power correlates 66% with ego dissolution. That's associated with this quieting of the default mode network. So something about yourself disappears when the default mode network quiets. And when that happens, it's one of the preconditions that is necessary for flow states. So there is something about the improvement of performance correlated with the reduction of default mode network action. And there's interesting correlations here with the energy budget and then that being reduced as performance increases. From that, you could create a pretty interesting hypothesis, something like, well, if the silencing of the DMN produces flow and increases peak performance, then the DMN must be doing something physically that interferes with whatever causes flow. And somehow there's a trade-off between the two and some sort of switch between the self-referential processing and the increased performance in the brain in some way. So this is also well known in neuroscience as well for something else that the DMN does, and that's that the DMN creates and produces significant electromagnetic fields in the brain. So this matters because what we know in physics and in neuroscience at large is that electromagnetic fields can transfer information, and these can interact with anywhere else in the brain. So you have to ask, like, well, could it be possible that these electromagnetic fields are interacting with parts of the brain that are responsible for the significant performance in flow states, for example? So that creates a logical question as well, is that are there physical structures in the brain that could be modulated by the DMN's electromagnetic fields and be responsive to energy transfer? Because we said that the DMN is expensive and costs a ton of metabolic energy. So then when it quiets, that's reducing the amount of energy and increasing the amount of energy that's available in other parts of the brain. So there's two dials here. There's the energy and the electromagnetic noise. And we know that there is a structure inside of cells that is extremely responsive to both of these things, and that is microtubules. And this is what's crazy, is that in the last few years, everything has changed on this front. The field of quantum biology has made massive discoveries, really starting in 2023, but you could even date it back to maybe 2020, with the likelihood of quantum processes existing in the brain itself. It's already well established that in biology and photosynthesis and with bird migration, that quantum processes are being used. And that probability has now shifted to the brain itself, as the last 25 years have culminated into microtubule research, which are structures in the cytoskeleton of cells. And it's now quite clear that these microtubules are quantum sensitive structures that genuinely do something valuable for the cell. And we know now that anesthetics dampen these structures and eliminate consciousness. And that's what CalRA 2023 started to point at. And then Kahn 2024 provided evidence, and Weiss 2025 really developed those things. And we know that microtubules respond to weak electromagnetic fields through quantum spin dynamics, which points to the fact that these are quantum processes taking place in microtubules at relevant room temperatures. And that was shown by Zada Haghidi in 2026, just recently, from Travis Craddock's lab. And we know that from research in the last few years, including the Chow 2020 paper that I did another video on, and as well like Cavaglia 2023, that we know that biology does not need to preserve quantum states for long periods of time. It just needs energy pumping to allow for a lot of micro quantum processes to take place continuously using this metabolic energy pumping. And so you can explore those in the book or in the other videos that I've posted about these things, and those will be in the description down below. But the plausibility is already here. The likelihood that the brain has quantum infrastructure is real and highly probable at this point. And so if the quantum hardware exists, and if it's sensitive to electromagnetic fields at the strengths that the DMN produces, then there are a handful of channels that would allow for the body to tune quantum states depending on the situation. we have a bunch of papers and the book talks about this and some other videos talk about this. But the first variable is the energy budget, which is because the DMN, it uses up 40% above brain baseline. And now when that quiets, it allows for energy to be transferred to other parts of the brain where it can utilize it. And so inside of microtubules, that would enable for more coherence, longer coherence, or more of the microtubules in the brain to be coherent. All of those could be possible. And that would be the first variable. The second variable is the electromagnetic interference itself that the DMN is creating, because there's so much energy flowing through the DMN that the interference itself generated by this electromagnetic environment would interfere with the coherence of the quantum states nearby. And so that would reduce the amount of microtubules that are in coherent quantum states and would reduce the computation capacity of the brain. It would move into the slower side of thinking, the less flow side of thinking. So the next variable would be the structural environment. So this would be, for example, the calcium that modulates the microtubule stability and other compounds that can get injected into the system that would weaken or destabilize microtubules, as we've seen with like anesthesia or with psychedelics, that different compounds can affect the actual microtubule structures themselves and shorten them or reduce their potency in quantum regimes. And so that would also be another dial that could work. And then the fourth is actually the geometric constraints of the DMN structure itself, that the DMN has to store beliefs and the meaning of the world and how you relate to it and all of the differentiation that it does. And those are energy intensive processes. And so when it's active, it's actually restricting what can even be computed in the first place. And so all four of these are moving together to restrict and narrow you when self-referential processing is high. And then it opens you up when self-referential processing is low. So when the DMN quiets, it enables a way larger landscape to be explored at a way higher speed. And that would be what flow states are. So think about what all four of those processes are doing. They're at their fundamental level. They're about energy, about distributing energy across the brain, about focusing where the energy of the brain is going and being used for. On one end, it's being used for self-referential thinking and for meaning making and differentiating me from you and this from that. On the other end, it's being used for computation, for exploration, kind of these two sides of the coin. But fundamentally, when you tie back to what the DMN is doing, it's a thermodynamic process. It's a process of energy. All of the things it's doing require energy, and this is why it's so expensive relative to the rest of the brain and especially the body. 40% above baseline, while the brain uses 20% of the body's entire energy budget, even though it's only 3% of the mass. So all of this to say, fundamentally, the ego embedded inside of the default mode network is a thermodynamic process. And where you currently are as a person, your current identity is a stable thermodynamic basin. It's kind of like being in a little gravity well, for example. It's where everything that exists in the world filters to, and it finds this safe pattern and a place where the ego has already developed this sense of self, the sense of meaning, the sense of purpose, the sense of structure around who I am, who I could be, who I will be, and what I'm doing on a day-to-day basis. This energy landscape, this shape of who you are, that is some sort of energy landscape inside of your head, inside of the mind, is evolutionarily in some regard. I mean, it is extremely beneficial to have a stable sense of identity, a cavern, a canyon of where you exist right now. And so it's pretty easy for the rest of the world to kind of shape into this mental landscape. And this evolutionarily selects for survival when it comes to social identity, tribal identity, a sense of self, how I fit with the group, how we all fit together as a society, as a tribe, as a community, enables us to strategize and work together to survive over time. So this sense of coherence and structure allows for civilization to manifest and for individuals to thrive inside of said civilization. But the thing is that this is just a temporary, stable energy landscape. Over time, it can change. I mean, are you the same person you were when you were 14, 17, 19, 21? Over time, you change. But it happens so gradually that we don't really notice it, even though things about our personality will change, things we value will change, beliefs we have changed, how we perceive the world changes. And in the past, it was really hard to observe and notice these changes because we didn't have videos and photographs and a lot of documentation of who we were in the past. But in modern day, I mean, personally, I have probably hundreds of hours of video of me as a kid and me as a teenager since I was doing content creation and all of these things. Like the amount of evidence that I have for who I used to be versus who I am today it's night and day. It's literally two different people. I could not have a conversation with my old self. He would get into arguments with me. You know, we would be very, very different in so many different ways. So in that sense, this landscape is shifting over time. Who we are, our core beliefs, our core identities change over time. So now, how does this all wrap back to that voice in our head? Is that you or is it not? And this is where it's important to keep this thermodynamic idea in mind, this stable landscape. Because think about the difference between planning into the future and acting right now. It's really easy to plan in the future. So at 11 p.m., it's easy to say, I'm going to the gym tomorrow at 5 in the morning. Because there is no action taking place. There's no energy expenditure that's external to the body having to happen in this exact moment. Actually, what's happening is you're going to lay in bed in the morning for the next 6 hours. So there's no thermodynamic cost to saying you're going to go to the gym at 5 in the morning. But when that alarm goes off, suddenly there's now a threat to this stable energy landscape that you currently exist in. You have not been going to the gym for the last 2 years. So this energy landscape that you currently exist in, this very stable, safe, secure way of being that the ego feels good about, and it knows exactly how much energy it's going to cost and how it'll affect your life on a day-to-day basis. Very safe. But now it has to make a decision. The ego has to be like, okay, are we going to go to the gym and spend this energy, or are we going to sleep in bed for another hour, and then just say it'll help us in the future? We'll be more effective later because of our sleep now. Don't go to the gym. So what is the ego doing? What is this voice doing? Okay, last night it was arguing for going to the gym, but it didn't cost anything. This morning, now it costs something. You're at the point where if you get out of bed and put on your shoes, the cost will occur. You're going to go to the gym. You're going to expend energy. So what is the ego doing? It's defending the current energy landscape. It's saying, how about we just don't go to the gym? And it will come up with a bunch of reasons for why that sounds totally plausible, totally reasonable. And so if someone asks you, hey, why didn't you go to the gym today? I thought you were going to. You'll have a totally reasonable argument that no one will bat an eye about. No one will think less of you about. It'll have no threat to your survival in society or no threat to your status or your core beliefs. You'll be safe. So this is the freedom the ego has in this moment to utilize these reasons, because there is no risk to not acting, but there is risk to acting. There's an adventure in some case. Putting on your shoes and going to the gym is exploring the unknown. It's lighting up a torch and going to the unknown cave. So you have a choice here, which is spend the energy or don't spend the energy. This is what you have to know, is that the ego will always first argue, don't spend the energy. It will always argue that when the time to act arises. When it's planning into the future, easy peasy. You'll write the book in the future. You'll make the video in the future. You'll make the music in the future. You'll go play a sport in the future. You'll go to the gym in the future. You'll have that tough conversation in the future. You'll go to the DMV in the future. You'll do your taxes in the future. But at some point, the bill comes due. You have to pay the tax. You have to go to the gym. You have to write the essay. So there is one version of you that is slave to the ego saying in the future. Another version of you is saying, you know what? I can look into the future and compare the now or the paths that I'll be if I just keep saying in the future versus doing the action today. And I know that doing the action today will have benefits in the future. Therefore, all right, ego, we're going to spend that energy today, baby. And we're going to embrace this process and explore together and have some fun today. Go to the gym. Those are the voices in your head. They're arguing both sides. It's both sort of you and both sort of not you. The ego is a part of your mind. It's a part of your physiological being, your anatomy that is you, but it is not you. It's only a conscious part of you that argues for the current state and will often barricade some of the actions that are most important for becoming who you could be. And that's what is really happening when you hear that voice at 11 p.m. So hopefully that helps. And obviously there's a lot more to this fundamentally with the science. And we have a lot of papers and research on that down below. But this is really what it feels like to be in the science itself. And so hopefully you enjoyed this and hanging out and talking about it. And we'll talk very soon. See you later.